Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video. So in this video, we're going to be talking about some of those characteristics that men look for in a woman who they want to make a wife. And just to be clear, I'll be talking about biblical men, about men who follow the principles of the Bible, about Christian men, men who have God as the center of their lives. These are some of the characteristics that I researched in the Bible, and I thought it would be great for me to just share them with women who want to learn these. So that's what I'm here for today. I invite you to interact with this video so it can reach as many people as possible. The way for us to accomplish that goal is by just liking this video, maybe leaving a comment, or even if you just subscribe, that will be so greatly appreciated. With that being said, let us get into those characteristics. Before we get into those characteristics, I want us to just remember that the typical Christian man may not be able to list off a bunch of traits and characteristics that he is looking for in a wife, because that is just not how men are made. Men don't typically sit down and write a list about how he wants his wife to be. Unlike us women, if somebody comes to you and asks you what you're looking for in a husband, it's likely that as a woman, you'll be able to list it off right at the top of the head. You can say, oh, you want him to go to church every Sunday. You want him to love kids and play with kids. You want him to go on walks with you. You want him to take you on dates every weekend. These are just some of the characteristics that, women, we can list those right off. But the typical man may not be able to do that. And it's not a flaw. It's just how men are designed. I was reading this article that was written by a Christian man, and he said that men don't typically know what they want in a woman. He boiled it down to two characteristics. After asking male friends and evaluating himself, the thing that they're looking for in a woman is spark and light. Spark and light. Now, to me, that is a bit ambiguous. That is not clear at all, but he went into greater detail to say spark and light, meaning that she is a godly woman, she likes to have a family, she is noble in character. I will leave the link to that article in case you want to read it and see what it's like from a Christian man perspective. But as for me, I'll be telling you from a Christian man perspective according to the Bible. So let's get into that. The first point that I want us to talk about is a thing called beauty. And I know some people might be shocked to see beauty on this list, but I'll get into why it's on this list. Before that, I want us to remember that in Proverbs 31, where it talks about the virtuous wife, it did say that charm is deceitful and beauty is passing or fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord shall be praised, which means that beauty ultimately is not the main concern when it comes to God. The most important thing for us as women to do is to praise the Lord, to fear the Lord, to give our lives to God, and nothing should replace Him. Nothing should take priority of God, which means beauty treatments, maybe going for a facial when you should be taking time to study the Bible, maybe giving up per meeting so that you can get your hair done. Like, these things should never ever take the place of God, because God doesn't like idols, and if you put something before Him, that becomes your idol. I'm just saying this to say that though beauty is important, it should never ever come before God. With that being said, let us discuss why I'm even having beauty on this list. So when I was studying the Bible, I noticed, especially in the Old Testament, where a lot of these husbands, they had beautiful wives, or they were trying to find a beautiful wife. I found it so interesting that the Bible would be going, talking, telling you a story, and then it would stop to say that this woman was beautiful or she was attractive, depending on the version that you're reading. And I'm talking about women like Sarah, like Rebecca, like Abigail, Esther. We're talking about women like Rachel. These women were specifically described as being beautiful. And I remember even with Sarah, on not one but two occasions, Abraham, her husband, he failed to mention that Sarah was his wife for fear of his life. You know, back in that time, the leaders could get rid of you and take your wife, and she was so beautiful, she was so attractive. She feared that they would get rid of him and take Sarah. That's saying something to me, that beauty is so important to these men. In the story of Rachel, we see that Rachel, she was highly desired by Jacob. And Jacob, when he went to Rachel's dad to get her hand in marriage, he said he would work 7 years for her. 7 years, right? And so he toiled and he worked for 7 years. Then he was tricked. And he got the sister of Rachel, Leah, who wasn't described as beautiful, but even though he got married to Leah, he still wanted Rachel, and so he worked another 7 years, which means he worked 14 years for this beautiful Rachel. I'm not saying that beauty was the primary factor in his decision to work 14 years to get Rachel to be his wife, but I think since it was mentioned that Rachel was beautiful, it probably played a role in Jacob's decision to do all of that just to get her. What I want us to remember is that there is not one set beauty standard. So this video is not to encourage anybody to go do cosmetic surgeries or to try to drastically alter your appearance to fit some sort of beauty standard. And more importantly, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. The person who is for you will think that you are beautiful, will think that you are attractive. This video is to encourage us to make ourselves more presentable, and you're supposed to be making yourself presentable regardless if you're trying to find a mate. But let's carry on. Remember in that story of Ruth, when Naomi, her mother-in-law, Ruth's mother-in-law, she advised Ruth to put herself together, wear clean clothes, put on perfume, and go sit at Boaz's feet. Boaz was the person who Ruth and Naomi both wanted to be Ruth's husband. So, I mean, that is saying something, that this older, wiser woman is encouraging younger Ruth to look more presentable. The next point is good character. Now, it does not matter. It does not matter how pretty you are on the outside. It doesn't matter if you get your hair done. It doesn't matter if you go to the nail tech every 2 weeks. It doesn't matter how expensive your clothes are. None of that matters. If your personality is rotten, you've lost 100 points. It becomes difficult for anybody, whether you're man, woman, boy, or girl, to be around a person who is not of good character. And when I talk about a person of good character, particularly for women, I'm talking about women who are kind, who are caring, nurturing, who are respectful, who are not malicious, who don't harbor hate in their heart, who are not always jealous and envious. As women, we kind of were built in a certain way to embrace a lot of these characteristics. You know, women tend to be very nurturing and caring and loving. Now, it becomes easier for us to show this level of kindness because that's how we are made. In the scriptures, in 1 Timothy 3 verse 11, when Paul was talking about the characteristics that make a good deacon, he also mentioned the deacon's wife, and he said, let's read it. He said, in the same way, the women are to be worthy of respect, not malicious talkers, but temperate and trustworthy in everything. So like I said, Malicious, unkind? No. Kind, nurturing, caring, loving? Yes, 100%. And this was seen played out in the story of Isaac and Rebecca. Now, this story went like this. So, Isaac was to get a wife, and his father Abraham sent out his servant to find a wife for Isaac. So, when the servant went on this mission, he prayed and he said to God, God, the woman who gives me water to drink from the well and also gives my camels water, she will be the wife. And there comes Rebecca. Before he could even finish praying, there comes Rebecca doing her daily drawing from the well. And so the servants asked Rebecca for some of the water from the well, and she graciously gave him this water, right? And she didn't stop there. She offered some to the camels as well. Now, this is saying something, that her good character, with her being so considerate, so kind, so caring of a stranger and his camels, she ended up being the wife of Isaac. And we know that story, how she played a role in God's covenant to Abraham. That's quite special. The next point is a companion, friend, best friend, confidant, whatever you want to call it. I feel like men are looking for that in a wife. And the same goes for women, of course. Women are looking for that type of friendship and that type of companionship with men. But since we're here talking about the characteristics men are looking for in a wife, let's focus on that. In the story of Adam and Eve, we see where God made everything. He had the trees there for Adam to eat from. He had the animals for Adam to take dominion over, and everything was good. And then he looked on Adam, he evaluated everything, and God himself said, it's not good for man to be alone. Ooh. And so God made him a helper, helpmeet, depending on the version that you read. And like I said in my last video, that this does not talk about a woman's worth. She is not less important to God. Of course not. It's talking about being a helper. It's talking about a function. So that function is supporting and being there as a confidant, as a source of companionship, which both men and women want, right? We do have separate roles, but I think it's just important for us to remember that men are looking for that. Imagine how Adam would feel in that place, all alone, just him. He wanted somebody to help him with that loneliness, to help him with his sexual desires, to help him be supported in having dominion over everything. And I want us to remember, ladies, that the Bible said in Proverbs, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. A what? Good thing. You are good. You are desired. You are loved by God and by the person who will be your husband. One other thing that I noticed men were looking for in the Bible is loyalty. And with that, we can go back to the story of Ruth and Boaz. We see where Naomi and Ruth both lost their husbands, and Naomi, the mother-in-law, she decided to return to her homeland in Bethlehem. Ruth, who was from another location called Moab, would probably have some trouble connecting as a widow in Bethlehem. So Naomi encouraged her to stay, to return to her family, and Ruth was like, nope, I will do no such thing. And it's that famous Bible verse that we love so much. Ruth said, wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you stay, I will stay. Your people shall be my people. Your God shall be my God. Now, if that is not loyalty, I don't know what is. I don't know what else is, because Ruth was willing to give up everything and her whole life back in Moab to go to a place of uncertainty with Naomi because she wanted to stick with Naomi, right? So upon the return to Bethlehem, things kind of worked out that Ruth had to go work, and she worked on Boaz. She worked on the farm of Boaz. And Boaz noticed her, and he found out her story. He was impressed by her loyalty to her mother-in-law Naomi, and he started to take care of her. But what is important, what we're going to focus on here, is that he was impressed by her loyalty to Naomi. I feel like loyalty can sometimes be underrated, but it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be. The Bible talks a lot about how horrible it is for people to be immoral and be adulterous. So we know that God encourages us to be faithful to our partners, and so that loyalty becomes very important. I'm sure that women value this trait in a man as well. So it goes both ways, of course. And in that same story, we see where Boaz referred to Ruth as a woman of noble character, which is also mentioned in Proverbs 31, where it talks about that virtuous wife. She's of a noble character. She's worth far more than rubies, and her husband have full confidence in her and lacks nothing. I find that correlation to be very interesting, that Boaz saw that in Ruth, that loyalty, that noble character, and it could go back, we could link it back to Proverbs 31, where it says her husband trusts her, he has full confidence in her, and he lacks nothing. My next point, and I reckon it's probably the most important, is that Christian men want women who pursue God, who love God, who worship God, who commit their lives to God and have Him as the head of their lives. And I say it's the most important because when it comes to that marriage, the Bible warns against being in unequally yoked relationships. You want to be with somebody who share your beliefs. That leads to less chaos in my head, right? Less chaos, less arguments, less complaining. A healthier, happier marriage when you have somebody who shares your beliefs. And not just that, you want somebody who is going to follow the principles of God and supports you in following the principles of God. Many of these men are going to be on a mission for God, for the gospel, and they'll want that support from you. Now, if you don't follow God and you don't love God, it's going to be difficult for you both to be healthy and happy in that relationship. And it goes back to Proverbs 31, where it says that charm is deceptive, beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord shall be praised. That right there is a mic drop. But I will not drop my mic. I need the mic. Anyway, so it shows us, ladies, that fearing the Lord, loving the Lord, serving the Lord is paramount to anything. That one-on-one relationship supersedes everything else. Even being with a husband. I encourage all of us to seek God first, to love God first, and then whatever else that we desire will fall into place. Those are the 5 things that I wanted to share with you about what men are looking for in a wife. If you like this video, then like the video, with the button. Click the button that says like. I really, really, really appreciate it. And remember to subscribe. Join me again for another video. And please don't be afraid to share your thoughts. I welcome those and I want to hear your perspective. Until we meet again, farewell.